media policy and rules for the Planning Commission, so I hope that's coming up in another meeting.
That's in the update of the P&Ps as well, or the
Great.
policies and procedures as well.
Okay, so that will be next meeting or the next. Also, if you want to be the chair or vice chair, you need to be familiar with the plan. Don't be too familiar with them, because if they're going to, I don't know if they're going to change, but we might do a quiz. I'm just kidding. We won't do a quiz. Next is consent agenda.
Oh, wait. Hold on.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I have
yeah, it's your
a
turn.
discussion
Your
matter.
turn. Yeah.
Okay, so over the past, I think, week or 2 weeks, I completed my continuing education credits. Like Commissioner Leverett, I used the Not Just Bikes video, and I found that quite interesting. But as a sort of, I guess, countervailing, right, like holding things in tension or in a dialectic, I would highly recommend Radical Planning on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@radicalplanning. This individual is a professional planner. I think he was in New York City. Now he's in Pennsylvania, who comes at planning from a relatively far left perspective. I don't always agree with the things that he describes, but he has a series called Radical Planning 101, which is just an excellent sort of introduction from his own perspective on sort of different ideas within planning and different currents within North American planning and how they relate to the structure of society and how we can make the world better. Certainly, I often will review his videos, his basic videos, and they have helped inform the way that I think about what we owe to our community and the way we can make our community better, even in cases where I disagree with him.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Now we're going to do the consent agenda. There's only one item on the consent agenda tonight. It's the minutes from the August 13th meeting.
I'll move to approve the meeting minutes from August 13th.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Barry and a second by Commissioner Bela. Any discussion? Okay, we'll vote. Commissioner Krasik,
Yes.
Commissioner Barry,
Yes.
Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett,
Yes.
Commissioner Barrett.
I should refrain from voting. I wasn't here last
Thank you.
weeks ago.
Commissioner Rosenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Bela,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. So that passes. Thank you. Next is our regular agenda. The first item is plan amendment for water conservation and land use planning. If you'll introduce yourself and present us your project.
Hi, I'm Michaela Bell. I'm a planner. It's good to see you all. I'm going to talk about this general plan amendment, but I have this incredibly smart lady who's the Director of Public Utilities, Laura Briefer. I think you've met her before. Here to assist and correct if I say anything incorrect about water or the city's water plans. And I know that you saw Laura present back in April as well to talk about our Growing Water Smart initiative at the city. So what is Growing Water Smart? Well, tonight we want to update the general plan, but the state also has directed us to do that by December 31st, right after Christmas. We have to have this plan updated, everyone. But really the intent of the state is for our water planning and land use planning to play together and plan together. So we have been working very closely with Laura and her team. And so we're presenting a new chapter to be added to Plan Salt Lake. And I'll get into that a little bit later. My favorite slide showing planning and public utilities working together. We've learned a lot about each other and data and water and land use, and there's been a lot of confusion too. But we're coordinating and we'll be reaching out to other divisions, I suppose, and departments in a meaningful way. But we're really leading out because we have our legal requirements and public utilities has their own statutory requirements. And we're just really intimately trying to create tools, policies, and make sure that we're meeting all of our state requirements. And the state last year said, hey, municipalities, yes, you need to update your general plan with a water element. And that's what we have in front of you. Hold on, let me get my glasses on here. And there are 6 key components, and we've addressed all those. Hopefully, you've enjoyed that staff report immensely and the draft chapter. But one thing I want you to know is that the city is already doing these things, okay? That's a key point here. Even though we're mentioning it and citing it, we are very actively working together to conserve water. The first component from the state is that we need to update our plans, the effect of current and future development on water demand and water infrastructure. And this is in the proposed chapter. Public Utilities manages the water supply and demand plan. And that data has been pulled out of that plan. And it shows projected population and projected water use based on 3 different scenarios. And the scenario that we've identified in this plan update is scenario 2, water conservation. And the amendment also talks about the water supply and demand plan being updated at least every 5 years, or in case, we get another prison, or there's some drought that hits us, or there's some other circumstance where the city needs to re-update or take a look at this data and create other scenarios. And to ensure that historical water use and our population projections are all being evaluated properly. So much more to say there. Yes, please, absolutely.
You'll notice, I'll just add here, you'll notice the map of our Salt Lake City water system area is larger than Salt Lake City itself, and includes large portions of Mill Creek, Holiday, and Cottonwood Heights, and smaller portions of Midvale, Murray, and South Salt Lake. We're also coordinating with other cities because they have the same requirement to update their general plan, and we're a major water provider for them. So the things that Michaela and the planning team have worked on here is serving as a model to bring to these other cities as they update their plans as well. And so that we have some consistency across the board. The land use in all of these different areas can be quite different. Like Salt Lake City has a much different mix of land use than, say, Mill Creek City within their boundaries. So there's some tailoring of those general plans, but just to know that there's a lot of sort of broader coordination that's happening too, and you guys have been amazing to help us with that. So
Thank you. Yes, I put that map in there just to discuss your service area. Thanks, Laura. The second one is to identify methods to reduce water consumption per capita. I won't read this text-heavy slide here. I know you read that staff report down. But one thing that planning will lead out on is developing consistent future land use designations. We already do, but we'll also be working with public utilities to identify land uses with high water consumption, whether that means prohibiting them, like we did bottling plants, that basically just take water away from our water system, or are there some sort of partnerships where public utilities works with the industry to gain efficiency with these large water users, et cetera, et cetera. Another thing that I think is really, from a land use perspective, that's mentioned in the update is to support decreased lot size standards. And there's a lot of data there. Maybe you were at the ULI Housing Summit. There was a whole portion talking about lot sizes, smaller lot sizes and smaller homes, but they certainly do. The data showing they use less water. And as water supply reduces, public utilities has the water supply and demand plan and the conservation plan that identifies all kinds of programs and policies and regulations. Third one is the state says you need methods to reduce water in city operations. So the city did take a look at our properties and identify, where we're falling short and water use efficiency, which really is updating irrigation. Really, there's a focus on parks and golf course irrigation systems. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. A lot of other things that the city is doing with regard to our properties, but feel free to peruse that report in your free time. 4, consideration of the regional water conservation goals. In that first chart from the water supply and demand plan, water conservation state goals, they are set, right? They're already set by the state. And our regional goal is to reduce water. Scenario 2 fits in line with that. Public utilities has already met the 40-year goal ahead of the target. That's good news. And so we're sticking with increased levels of conservation and all the programs that the city has. Of course, that can always change. Number 5, considering the city's existing water conservation plans. Of course we do. Wow, I've learned a lot about them. So we do mention these plans and highlight them in our general plan because they're a little bit different. Like I said, they have different statutory requirements, but we talk about them. So the water supply and demand plan, I don't know if you want to totally talk about that because I haven't seen it, but it identifies all kinds of information about where we have water in our aquifers and infrastructure that the city controls. The water conservation plan is informed by that main plan, if that makes sense. Both are being updated, and then I'll have Laura make any other points.
I think we might have talked a little bit about this last time I was here, but the supply and demand plans are conducted under a statutory requirement for the management of the city's water rights. So we have to show out at least 40 years that we will put the water rights that we hold to beneficial use. And so that's updated all the time, like it's iterative, but it's also used in order for us to identify any risks or vulnerabilities with our water supplies and trends with our water demands, and to, as tightly as possible, project out into the future what our land use and water demands are going to look like and whether the supply can meet that demand. The last water supply and demand management plan was completed as part of a 2022 larger master plan where we looked at infrastructure as well. And that plan, one of the impetus of that plan was, A, we had to plan for a change of land use in the Northwest Quadrant. B, we had to plan for a change in land use when we had the state correctional facility come in. That whole area actually had been zoned, I think, for residential use, and is now a completely different land use. And then, of course, we always like to update our existing knowledge on what a changing climate does to water supply. The two plans, as Michaela mentioned, go together. The supply and demand plan and the water conservation plan are usually done in tandem with each other, so that we can take the best available data. We just kicked off our 2025 water conservation plan public meetings today. So today is Water Conservation Wednesday for us. And one of the big changes in our 2025 water conservation plan, which is on the same track as the amendment to the general plan to be adopted by December 31st of this year, is the consideration of Great Salt Lake in the conservation plan. So there's a lot of information online. I brought a copy, but this is available online, our new water conservation plan, and items that are in our new water conservation plan, we've also tried to include at a high level in the general plan amendment. So,
Coordination Nation, I told you. The sixth component was to include policies relating to sustainable landscaping. We've done most of this. I'm sure that there will be other changes. You saw the new landscaping chapter. Well, most of you did. And we've already adopted most of the state's landscaping recommendations, so go Salt Lake City. And there will probably be others that will come up as far as zoning ordinance amendments. I will leave it at that and just say, I'm recommending that you forward a positive recommendation to the city council to adopt this new chapter, please, so that we can tell the state we did by Christmas. And I do also want to put in a plug for public utilities, water conservation plan. I filled out the survey today. Please fill out the survey. And we're both here for questions.
Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing on this item, and I have one card from Cindy Cromer, if you want to approach the microphone. You'll have 2 minutes. Get closer.
I don't know.
Is the state legislature and its prior and probable intervention in the city's water rights. As Ralph Nielsen, one of my heroes, told Palmer to Paulus almost 40 years ago, those water rights are the city's most valuable asset. So here's what I think you need to add to this document. More about the Great Salt Lake. I'm delighted to hear that it's in the Water Conservation Plan, but the Great Salt Lake is a source of increased air pollution and decreased snowpack. And I do not know of stories of saline lakes that have been turned around when they are as depressed as ours is. Secondly, need more about using gray water, and that would require a county-wide change. As far as I know, there are still only 2 counties in the state that allow the use of gray water. I do it surreptitiously at my properties, trotting outside with viable water. Number 3, more attention to the diversity available in turf grasses. I'm really finding it tiresome that turf is always talked about negatively. We have some turf grass developed by our institutions of higher learning like BYU and Utah State that are much more water thrifty. And replacing turf with rocks just adds to the heat island effect, especially if you use black rocks, which is really stupid. And fourth, to recognize that the reduction in gallons per capita has been the low-hanging fruit so far, and that saving water per capita is going to get tougher going forward, especially for members of HOAs and renters who are assessed at a flat rate for water. And I do want to thank Nick for noting that we are inconsistent in references to density in our future land use maps of our neighborhood plans, and we are one city, and we need to talk about density and future land use maps in one terminology. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak on this project? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Now it's time to this is a legislative item, so the Planning Commission can give a positive recommendation to the Salt Lake City
Sorry,
Council.
can we pause for just a second?
We're going to hold on just a minute.
Thank you.
Okay, for this legislative item, we can make a positive recommendation to Salt Lake City Council, a negative recommendation to Salt Lake City Council, or continuation to another date. Although we have been asked to make a decision if we can because of the time requirements. So now it's time for discussion.
I would like to hear some of your responses to Cindy's comments, Laura, if you feel like we've addressed the Great Salt Lake sufficiently, et cetera.
Yeah, and actually I was having this thought that, Cindy, I've jotted these questions down because I think they're very fitting for our water conservation plan that gets more into the details of like the implementation strategies. And by referencing the water conservation plan in the general plan amendment, I think we're probably covered, but the draft water conservation plan does talk about Great Salt Lake. I appreciate the recognition of our water rights as our most important asset, and we should definitely be aware of any interference with that. That's not necessarily in our conservation plan, but it is in our water supply and demand plan and our general strategies. Gray water and water reuse is also in our conservation plan. Cindy is correct that there are some health department regulations around the use of gray water, and in large part because for Salt Lake County Health Department, my understanding is it's such a large area that to regulate that for contaminants is difficult for them, but it's something that's definitely been on our radar. And then finally, on different types of turf grasses, we completely agree with that, and that's also referenced in the conservation plan and is actually an ongoing program we have right now with a turf trade program for low water use grasses that we developed with Utah State University. So all great comments.
That's wonderful. Thank you. If there's no discussion, I'll make the motion.
I actually have just a couple questions. First of all, I just want to, I guess, address, so there is a discussion of increasing, so the consistent future land use regulations, I agree that that's much appreciated. And sort of implicit, the decreasing lot sizes plus identifying land uses with high water consumption. Ultimately, single-family housing is going to have higher per capita water consumption, and I do wonder if there's an opportunity to explicitly just call out like increased densification and the acceptance of greater amounts of middle housing as a goal citywide for water conservation, of course, among other factors. You know, I'm always cheering from the rooftops for middle and high density housing, but I think in this particular case, there's a very clear connection that the more people you can get living, frankly, in Salt Lake, period, the more people who are living in those middle density or high density situations, and thus the less overall water per capita use we're seeing. Even if, you know, the Salt Lake total water consumption goes up, it means that there's much less of a decrease proportionally in, say, Saratoga Springs. In theory, just to give one hypothetical example. So I guess I would just ask, was there any consideration of explicitly mentioning the possibility of, planning towards opening up more of the city towards middle housing?
So I can weigh in here. This Plan Salt Lake does do that already.
Okay.
So that's there's a whole section on housing. It's also in the city's, the housing plan that was adopted last year to do that. So it's not specifically mentioned in this water section, but it is part of Plan Salt Lake to do that.
It would be worth a mention too, if we have an initiative for this missing middle housing type with zoning changes.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think that cross-referencing is always a useful component. So that's thing one. And then second is I noticed, I think further down in the plan, there was a discussion of pools and the fact that the plan does not incorporate any consideration of restrictions on pools and other open bodies of water that might results in increased evaporation because there's not enough research done. And that kind of surprised me, to be honest. It seems to me that that's a pretty... Obviously, I am well aware of the way in which high school understandings of anything are often lead one in the wrong direction. But is there currently ongoing research on that topic? Is there research that might have been missed, or is there just nobody researching this topic?
That's a great question. And I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. We could check in with our partners, our academic partners, and the Alliance for Water Efficiency around pools. Just sort of my gut reaction to that is we have a lot of more intense water uses than that we could we definitely focus on, but we can take that back. And actually, it's a great also a great comment for the conservation plan. Is it okay if I go back to your other question around density too? Just one thing to clarify is we have different metrics for water conservation. And one of those is the gallons per capita per day that you mentioned, where higher density helps with that. The other metric we have is just overall system-wide water use. And that's not only if you assume that high density is replacing an equal amount of single-family residential is that an issue. And oftentimes when properties are they transition or redevelop as high density from some other use, the actual footprint of the water use on that acre is higher. And the characteristic of that water use is different. So that's something that we, work closely with planning, because we all take that different characteristic of water use, which actually might be consistently higher, even though the gallons per capita is lower, into that long-range planning. So just wanted to make sure there was a clarification on that distinction.
I very much appreciate that distinction. I guess, and I'm not sure if I can phrase this as a question without completely torturing it. I guess what I would say there is that the question then becomes like, what scale are we thinking at? Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, all else being equal, assuming all else is equal, right? Like if more people are moving to Salt Lake and the overall population of the world stays equal, right, and the water use per capita goes down, then the overall world's water use goes down. Mm-hmm. But of course, water systems are not, parts of water systems are global, but other parts are very, very local. And I wonder how you think about, so here's the question, how you think about balancing that fact that we are part of a global system and at the very least a sort of mega regional system, the Great Basin, where decreasing water use per capita, assuming that the population stays equal, is probably beneficial, versus increasing the overall water use in like Salt Lake plus the other areas could be problematic just because that means you have to pipe more water in from elsewhere.
Yeah. And our long-range planning doesn't anticipate developing new sources from elsewhere. We have existing sources that haven't been developed yet, where we've been able to defer conservation on the system, which has been great. But we do have some minor new surface water sources, that would be Mill Creek, to develop, and groundwater sources, and then wastewater reuse, which we've deferred because our wastewater gets discharged to Great Salt Lake. So conservation, water conservation, and the scenarios in our long-range plans include sort of that more sustained conservation to continue to defer those diversions as much as possible. If that makes sense. I hope I answered that question.
I think for the most part, yes.
Yeah, great discussion. Thank you.
I'm ready to make a motion.
A tiny question. So kind of on that point of more density using more water usage, is there a kind of a balancing point? Is there where watering lawns may use more than a duplex, or Is there, or a triplex or a quadplex, or is there a space at which you are at a net loss with increased density? And is that something you know? But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not something that we've noticed in our long-range planning, that like a net loss with, I guess, with the caveat that we need to conserve in order to stay within our means, right? Overall. We know we're growing and we're planning for growth, and I would agree that density helps us more efficiently grow with respect to water use. The way I also balance this is we've got to do something about the high depletion of outdoor water use, not just on residential, but across the board on commercial, industrial, and institutional. So part of the way we're balancing it is to look at the whole picture of water demand on the system, both from the residential and the multifamily and commercial, institutional, and industrial. So it's a complex puzzle.
Totally.
And I'd love to talk more about that. And there are sections of our water supply and demand plan that we make public. Some parts are private due to infrastructure details, but there's a lot of discussion around that balancing in there too, and in our conservation plan as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This will be a new chapter 14 as part of Plan Salt Lake. That's the idea, so that
That's
when,
correct.
okay.
Yes.
So that when new like text amendments are proposed and stuff like that, we'll go back and check and see, does that actually, support these things that we said that are important to support? And that those will be reasons that we could
Yes.
like or support or not support future text amendments or laws or projects and stuff like that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
In the matter of PLN PCM 2025-00481, Water Conservation and Land Use Element to the General Plan Amendment to Salt Lake City, I move that the council approve the proposed text amendment to the land use plan with the following addition. Under section 3 of policy, in chapter 14, under section 3 of policies, add a bullet point, continue, or, how to phrase this, continue to evaluate the per capita water use impacts of implementation of the middle housing elements of other sections of this plan, or something similar. I would give the planning commission or the planning staff discretion on how to approach that, but the concept would be a sort of cross-reference to middle housing plans and their relationship to per capita water use impact.
I'll second that.
Does that feel, thank you. Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Rosenfield and a second by Commissioner Christensen. Any discussion or other action to that motion? Okay. We'll vote now. Commissioner Rosenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Vela.
No.
Commissioner Krasik.
Yes.
Commissioner Barry.
No.
Commissioner Christensen.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
No.
Commissioner Leverett.
No.
Commissioner Barrett.
Yes.
I'm also going to vote no. So that's 5 noes and 4 yeses. So that motion fails. If someone wants to make another motion.
I will make a motion
Okay.
for PLN PCM 2025-00481. Based on the information presented in discussion, I move that the commission recommends that the city council adopt this request.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Christensen and a second by Commissioner Rosenfield. Any action or anything else on the motion? Discussion? Okay, let's vote. Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett,
Yes.
Commissioner Krasik,
Yes.
Commissioner Barrett,
Yes.
Commissioner Barry,
Yes.
Commissioner Vela,
Yes.
and I also vote yes, so that passes unanimously. So thank you. We'll send a
Thank
positive
you.
recommendation for that.
Thank you, everybody. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all you do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next item is item number 3, a text amendment clarifying the extension of land use approvals citywide.
All right, so this is a text amendment to clear up some things like was just stated. And just real quickly, why we're proposing this changes is that some of our approvals currently do not have an expiration date in our code, so they would just go on forever until someone decides to do something. The ones that do have an expiration date require a building permit, but a building permit is not always required. For example, a restaurant that may have a bar space may be converted to another bar use, which is a different land use. There's no building permit often in those, so it's just a business license. And then there's other ways to vest an approval. For example, the commission frequently sees plan developments that include a subdivision. One of those key things is actually submitting a subdivision application, which has to happen before we can issue building permits. That rarely can happen within 1 year. And so this proposal basically is trying to address a number of those things. So this chart on the screen lists the applications involved. So what we're talking about are final plat applications, a street dedication plat, and then conditional uses, design review, and plan development. Starting with final plats, they currently do not have an expiration date once somebody submits that. Subdivisions have a two-step process. There's a preliminary approval and then a final approval. The preliminary approval requires that a final plat be submitted, I think it's within 12 months or 18 months. But once they submit that, there's no end date. So under our current code, so someone could sit on that for literally years and years and years. Over that time, rules change, et cetera. And there may be some issues with that down the road, especially with some of our larger kind of light industrial manufacturing areas where we do most of our subdivisions in the city. So this proposal would add that after a final plat is submitted, that it has to be recorded with 18 months. So all final plats are recorded with the Salt Lake County Recorder's Office. The code does include some leeway if things get caught up in internal city processes. Sometimes it may take us a little while to get, for example, the subdivision improvement agreements in place. And so that's accounted for. The second is a street dedication plat. These are all, the street dedication is an administrative function, but after that is approved, that plat has to be recorded within 180 days. The reason why that is shorter is because when we're reviewing a street dedication plat, we're essentially we have the plat already done as a draft, and it's just a matter of once we approve it, actually having it recorded. There's not really a public process with the street dedication plats. And then finally, with the 3 land use applications, which the commission sees quite frequently, they do have an expiration date of 12 months from the date of approval. They all require a building permit to be submitted. This proposal would change that so that it's not just a building permit. It could be that submitting that final plat application. It could be executing a development agreement. Some of these are associated with development agreements if they involved a zoning change. And then sometimes it may just be a business license that is needed. And so this expands on when those, or what vests those approval. The other thing that is changing is right now, as you know, approved applicants can request a extension. The code does not limit the number of requests somebody can make. This will add one. So there's a one-time 12-month extension request. That doesn't apply for street dedications because it's just 180 days. And then also, if any of those actions expire, the land use approval also expires. So let's say somebody they're approved for a plan development. They end up submitting their final plat application, but they don't actually get it recorded with 18 months. They just disappear. If that happens, their land use approval would automatically expire as well. Similar with a building permit. A building permit, if it goes stagnant for 6 months, it automatically expires. That land use approval would also expire if it's been more than 12 months already. So that is the scope of this proposal.
Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing for this item. So Cindy Cromer, if you want to speak now, you'll have 2 minutes. Sure.
Never known an audio system that healed itself. These extensions are not distributed evenly across the city's neighborhoods. By the time this proposal reaches the city council, I will have mapped the extensions over the last few years, showing the inequity in the distribution of the stalled projects. Central City is littered with projects which are not moving forward. I want to recognize 2 exceptions. One is in Lingua at the corner of 300 South and 300 East. It is still open for business. Thank goodness. We don't have a dead corner. And Western Gardens, which ceased operations earlier this summer, was in business long after its approvals were granted. Those extensions have not been a burden on the neighborhood, but many others have. Imagine what Central City would look like if a property had to be in compliance with all city ordinances to get an extension. Just think about that. In compliance with all ordinances regarding security of the buildings, weeds, trespass, and so forth. You should not grant extensions unless there is a community benefit, a real one about affordable housing, open space, or adaptive reuse. I don't view a gerrymandered benefit such as more market rate housing as contributing anything other than to the tax base of the city, which is not inconsequential, but in some parts of the city, these extensions are a huge burden, and I'm asking for more scrutiny of them rather than a rubber stamp. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this application? It's not really an application. Proposal? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. I wonder if you want to take a minute to respond to those items we heard in the public comment period about should a property maybe be in compliance with all of the city rules before it can get an extension?
I think the reality of that kind of provision is that what we're going to see is uses and buildings demolished as a result instead of being in compliance. So I think there is already regulations in place to make sure properties are in compliance. And if there are complaints about those, then civil enforcement addresses it. I don't necessarily think that a land use approval should be contingent on that, because the idea is that it's going to change somehow. That's why we granted the land use approval. So I don't know how we would add something that would fairly do that. We already have something in place. I don't think it's necessary to add something else.
Okay. How about a community benefit for an extension?
So by adding a community benefit, it would assume that there would also be something that at the time of initial approval that there should be a community benefit. And I think that is what is challenging. Not all of our land uses do that. For example, a conditional use under state code, we have to approve unless there's a detrimental impact that can't be mitigated. There is no way to add a community benefit to something like that. Similarly with a subdivision, there's just not a way to do that. We are actually in the process of looking at adding community benefit requirements for plan development, so that would address that. But for a lot of the land use approvals, there would not, there are likely some legal issues with adding community benefits to that.
Okay, thank you. Now, I just have a couple of questions. If your conditional approval is like the action that keeps it from expiring is you get a business license for a bar or something like that, and then that license needs to be renewed every year or something like that, does their conditional use expire if their business license expires?
So the conditional use expires because it is specific to a use. Under our current code, they expire at the time the use ceases.
Okay.
So essentially, if it's abandoned. So if that business license is not renewed, if someone loses their state-approved liquor license, that suddenly ends that use.
So that just, what we're looking at here just refers to them like vesting in the original approval.
That's all we're talking about
And
is
then
the original approval.
The rules for ending are the same.
That's right.
And is any of this kind of retroactive? Like if a project's already gotten a 1-year extension, can they get another extension going forward? Or does this mean every project that already has an extension, that's their last one?
I think we'd have to look into that. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That would be a legal opinion that we'd have to get some insight from the city attorneys on before we answer that.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
I just want to say that I am so happy that we are doing a one-time extension. I often for years asked, like, how many? I think one person asked for 4 in my time, and I stopped voting for them yes after 2. So I mean, it's an issue. We have a lot of serial applicants who are like, will be asking for an extension, then another extension, another extension. And so I'm really, really in favor of that caveat. I don't think holding up any parcels because of projects that just aren't feasible is advisable for the way we move forward. So I'm really happy for that part. Thank you.
I think not that it makes, I would like to see that answer about how it applies to people who already have extensions or approvals that have already been put out, if they just get 1 going forward or 2 or 3. I know that Commissioner Berry has asked when extension is given to us to vote on, like, tell us how, which one is this, which extension is this. And I appreciate that you guys do that. I don't know how it works out. Obviously, that needs to be figured out about how it works on projects that already are, have already been approved. But I feel like getting everybody on the ball with, let's do this project in a year or 2 years makes sense. That's it for me.
I would just, go ahead, Laura. I would just comment that I think it rightfully places the onus on the applicant, for a final plat, conditional use, plan development, or design review. And I've been in a position where I'm representing an owner for any one of these. I like the 1 year that it needs to be done in a year, so and after that, if it doesn't happen, then it's over. So I think it's a good thing to keep the process moving appropriately. So for that, I'm very much in favor of this.
So I think it will come as a surprise to nobody that I am somewhat sympathetic to certain YIMBY ways of thinking. But one of the most cogent critiques I think I've seen of the YIMBY approach is that often, because of the way that the land use market is structured, developers will choose to act in ways that do not increase the supply of housing. And that often regulation is required to intervene, in fact, to pressure developer capitalists and developer landlords into producing a sufficient supply of housing. And I wonder in terms of how you think about this question, how you think about this legislation, whether basically eliminating the ability to indefinitely extend could actually create more pressure on landowners to actually build, or if it actually could reduce the pressure or cause them to not choose to supply that housing.
I don't know if it necessarily changes the pressures, just because I think most of the pressures are probably financial based to begin with. But I think what it does do is that oftentimes we change our regulations because of what's built or developed doesn't align with city goals, right? And so oftentimes we're like, hey, wait a minute, that's not quite what the community wants, the city wants, or anybody really wants or needs. And so we'll change the rules. And so what this does is that it makes it so that those types of projects at least have a shot clock at that point, right? They're going to end up having 24 months at most to do it. If they don't, then they're subject to whatever rules change. So I think that's really one of the key factors in limiting those extensions.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm looking for a motion if there's no more comments.
I think I can make the motion. I think staff has gone through, writing the proposal, public process and comments have been done. City attorney has reviewed it, and for all of those reasons, I would say that, sure. A motion to recommend for approval based on the information presented and discussion. Is it necessary to read all of that? Motion sheet for expiration of land use.
All you really need to do is read the
I didn't
one
think
line.
It was. So let me start again. Motion to recommend to approve. Based on the information presented and the discussion, I move that the commission recommends that the city council adopt this request.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Vela and a second by Commissioner Krasik. Any discussion or other actions on that motion? All right, we'll vote. Commissioner Vela.
Yes.
Commissioner Barry.
Yes.
Commissioner Barrett.
Yes.
Commissioner Krasik.
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Christensen.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott. And I also vote yes, so that passes unanimously to send a positive recommendation for this text amendment to the City Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item is a work session on the Avenues Plan update. This item, like I said, is a work session, so there's no public comment period, and there's no action for us to take. We're just giving feedback. So thank you.
If I may, Madam Chair, I have a quick.
Yeah.
So I have had some brief discussions with planning staff in my professional capacity, just providing insight onto transportation elements of this plan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it raises to the level of needing to recuse myself, but if you believe I need to, then I understand.
Slideshow mode on this.
Can I get an opinion from higher up?
Yeah, I don't think the type of information that we've discussed raises that level of creating any sort of conflict or ex parte or anything like that. So
Okay. Someone
you.
can make a motion to recuse Commissioner Rosenfield if you want to, or we'll just go on. Okay. We're going to go. Thanks.
All right, so Riley and I are here to talk about the Avenues Community Plan update. We're going to talk about why we are doing this particular community, where we're at in the process, what we've heard from the community so far, and then next steps. So this plan was identified as needing to be updated because it is the oldest community plan we have in Salt Lake City. It's almost as old as me. It was adopted in 1987. We are also looking to, the community plan will build on city policies and initiatives established in our citywide general plan, Plan Salt Lake. So the plan will be updated to better align with Plan Salt Lake, as well as other overarching plans like the city housing plan. Because each neighborhood and community within Salt Lake City is unique, each community will help carry out the vision in its own unique way. And then finally, the plan will create a vision for the next 10 years through 2035. This slide outlines the general process for this type of plan update. We are right in the thick of the analyzing data and draft plan stage. As part of the initial process, we developed an existing conditions report. I'm just going to go over a few highlights from the existing conditions report, but the full report is available on the Avenues Community Plan project webpage on the city's website. This is just the plan area for context. The area is approximately 3,000 acres in size. You can see there its relationship with the rest of the community plan areas, and then to the right, the avenues. This is just a quick shot of the demographics of the avenues. Things vary widely among census tracts in the avenues, so we ended up splitting that information up for our analysis. The avenues is home to about 8% of the city's population. A high percentage of the population has a college degree. And median income is fairly similar to the median income of Salt Lake City as a whole, with the exception of one census tract, which is the dark blue color there, the northernmost portion. This map, unfortunately, if it had a legend, is helpful to visualize the development periods in the avenues. Nearly half of the buildings in the avenues were constructed before 1920. That's the light teal color that represents that age range. Before 1920, and it's reflective of a historic development pattern. The first zoning regulations were adopted in 1927. This is mostly true for the lower avenues that developed during that time period, and then further north developed in later periods. In terms of land use and zoning, the majority of the land is zoned for residential uses or open space. Open space areas are largely foothills areas, as well as the Salt Lake City Cemetery. Mixed use, institutional, and commercial uses each account for just approximately 1% of the zone land in the plan area. In terms of housing types, the majority of housing types in the avenues is single family, followed closely by apartments at 39%. Almost all apartments, as you can see, are located in the lower avenues. Actually, as you can see on the map, a lot of the mix of housing types is also within the lower area of the avenues. Once you get to like the middle avenues area, which is just north of maybe 7th North, it's there's some sprinkled in, but it's predominantly single family and some duplexes. In terms of parks, this map shows a map of the parks within the plan area as well as trails within the plan area. All 100% of households are within a 15-minute walk of a park trailhead. This does include the city cemetery in that analysis.
Daily traffic volumes are highest along South Temple, 11th, 3rd, and 2nd Avenue, and BEI and Virginia Street. There are existing bus routes throughout the avenues. The routes along 9th Avenue and South Temple are part of a frequent service network, which means that the bus stops along those roads are served every 15 minutes. The bus route traveling along 11th Avenue and Virginia Street is served every 60 minutes, And then the final bus route along 3rd Avenue is also served every 60 minutes. The Avenues neighborhood is in a National Register Historic District, and the neighborhood also has 3 local historic districts, which are the Avenues Historic District, the City Creek Historic District, and a portion of the South Temple Historic District. The Avenues Historic District is Salt Lake City's largest locally designated historic district, and there are 45 individually listed historic structures in the Avenues community. Thank you. Public engagement for this project is generally divided into 3 main categories. First is opportunities and issues, which took place during spring and summer of this year. Big ideas, which we are in the middle of now, will continue through fall of this year. And last is the final vision category, which will take place over this fall and spring of 2026. During the opportunities and issues stage, the team presented highlights from the existing conditions report to the community to gather feedback that will help inform the Avenues Plan update. During this stage, we have also held stakeholder interviews, had an online survey and an open house, and several in-person outreach events. I'll talk a bit more about the public engagement that we've done so far later in our presentation. During the Big Ideas stage, which we are in now, we will brief the Planning Commission, the Historic Landmark Commission, and the City Council on the plan update process. During these briefings, we will share the initial engagement results, and then separately, we will also share those results with the public at other engagement events to get feedback on the common themes that we've identified and our draft initiatives. For our first public engagement opportunity during this stage, our team is planning to attend the Avenues Street Fair Festival on September 13th, and there will be other opportunities for public input, but those are yet to be determined. And then during the final vision stage, we will get feedback on the final draft plan from city commissions, the city council, city department reviewers, and the public. We will hold engagement events in the community to provide an opportunity for the public to review the draft plan and provide feedback. And the online open house webpage will be continuously updated throughout the project timeline to provide information to the public on its status and upcoming engagement opportunities. We have held 6 in-person events at various locations throughout the community, including at Smith's and Memory Grove. At these events, interactive boards were used to collect public input on various topics, including housing, transportation, and the local economy. We've held 8 stakeholder interviews with various community members, including those from the Greater Avenues Community Council, business owners, and other residents. The project has an online open house webpage to provide information to the public on the status of the plan update and upcoming engagement opportunities. And an online survey was created to gather feedback from neighborhood residents, and in total, we have had 265 survey responses. The feedback that we've gathered from the initial community engagement will be analyzed on how it aligns with the existing community conditions and relevant citywide policies, and the common themes that are identified will be used to inform the goals and policies that will shape the updated plan. In general, neighborhood residents greatly value the neighborhood's historic character, the walkability, and sense of community. 95% of survey participants rated quality of life in the Avenues as good or very good. When asked about the most important issues facing the Avenues, participants identified housing costs and availability, transportation safety and access, and the lack of neighborhood-serving businesses and amenities. Other areas of concern include redevelopment of the LDS hospital and lack of bike infrastructure. Since the Avenues is an established neighborhood, public outreach related to housing aimed to identify the preferred strategies for increasing housing units while preserving existing homes. Most survey respondents want more housing throughout the neighborhood, but compatibility of new development was greatly emphasized. The most popular strategies for adding housing units includes adaptive reuse of existing buildings, new mixed-use development, and infill development by allowing different housing types in certain areas. When asked about preferred infill development types, duplexes, townhomes, small single-family, and small-scale multifamily containing 4 to 9 units are the most preferred types of infill development. Community engagement related to transportation aim to understand the community's perspective on safety and access in the Avenues neighborhood. Speeding and unsafe intersections are the most frequent safety concern, and other areas of concern include lack of bike infrastructure, pedestrian safety, and public transit frequency.
Community engagement on parks focused on amenities within existing parks, as well as any type of improvements that people recommended to make parks more enjoyable or usable, since all residents are within a 15-minute walk of an existing park. Feedback provided, common answers were maintenance and upkeep, shade, lighting, play elements, gathering areas, drinking fountains, and then although not typically associated with parks or not always associated with parks, we did hear a lot about the need for community garden space in the Avenues. In terms of neighborhood businesses, we focused on amenities people would like to see more of or thought were lacking in the community. These included cafes, we heard butcher and flower shops, restaurants, retail, recreation, and entertainment. Preferred locations for commercial uses were pretty mixed, with all of these locations having about the same percentage of responses. Spread throughout the Avenues, corner properties, clustered near other commercial development, and then on specific streets. 3rd Avenue and East Street were the most popular choices that were mentioned on specific streets. In terms of next steps, going back to this engagement timeline, we are through that initial engagement window, and we are focusing on identifying common themes that have emerged from the first window of public engagement that will be shared with the community, and that will happen within the coming months. And then again, our next event is the Avenue Street Festival on September 13th, and then the final engagement window will be bringing the draft plan back for your feedback as well as your recommendation, and move forward to the City Council. So that is all we have prepared for today, but happy to take any questions or comments that you have.
On the advancing age of the plan that this is set to replace, the thought did cross my mind that if it were still in place for another 12 years and actually reached 50 years old, it might actually become eligible for historic preservation. So it's probably good that we are taking a look at getting this updated, and especially since in some of the public discussions, we've had a lot of references to the plan that is in serious need of update. So glad to see this being updated.
I was going to say, just as you all start presenting, I got a message about the U Street Block Party this Sunday, so that's another place if you want to come out and talk to residents. There'll be folks there. So,
what is it, a block party?
Yeah, the U Street Block Party. It's an annual
Okay.
Labor Day weekend party.
All right. I'll be out of town, but maybe Riley's in town. Thank you.
I have a quick question, and it's related to wildfire. And I just, at a number of years ago, I worked for Rocky Mountain Power and did a lot of work with the city, and I know there was some concern of the residents in the upper avenues that, abut the foothills about wildfire risk. And I just wonder if, and if so, how that increasing risk and those considerations could be addressed or are addressed or might be addressed in a plan like this, or if it's just out of scope?
We touched on it a little bit in the existing conditions report, just highlighting areas where there are natural lands that abut residential areas. The fire department, I believe in accordance with state law, is developing a, should I let you say it?
You can say.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if I was sharing something. They are developing a wildland interface map that eventually we will be using. So it will be mentioned as well in the future land use map, the areas that have been mapped in that map that does not yet exist or has been adopted, that those areas will have limited growth and maybe some different restrictions on materials and things like that related to fire safety.
And just the Planning Commission will be seeing that wildland interface building code update the second meeting in September. So we're obligated to adopt something under state code by the end of this year due to legislation this past year, including a map that's been created by our fire department and the state Department of Natural Resources. So yeah, it's actually a pretty big thing. And it does include things that would take precedent over some of our zoning regulations. So that's why it's will be coming to the Planning Commission for recommendation.
I was surprised to see in your first map that the East Bench is abutting to avenues, but that's the whole master plan area. So I guess East Bench includes the University of Utah, which I wonder if there's any consideration to do the boundaries of these master plan units. Do they change over time, or was it once it's laid out, that's it for the rest of forever till we annex more land or something like that? Like, is part of City Creek becoming more avenues-y?
City Creek has its own plan. So in the existing conditions report, we did acknowledge that the City Creek is within the avenues, half of it. The dividing line is roughly City Creek itself, and then it splits the other half with Capitol Hill. So we do acknowledge that this other area exists, but we're not looking to change the boundaries of the Capitol Hill area, or excuse me, the City Creek Canyon area. In terms of East Bench plan is not that old. I want to say it's like 2014? 2017. So this plan is not looking to change those boundaries. Maybe in the future, that's something that could be considered with a plan update, but as far as the avenues is considered, that's not something we looked at since that area was recently looked at with the East Bench plan.
Right. Well, and none of the we're never going to have all the master plans re-envisioned at the same time, because that wouldn't make sense. So if those boundaries, maybe those boundaries are just immutable, like they are what they are because the plan was made in 1987, and I don't know, but maybe it seems like maybe there should be consideration of, so we're not gerrymandering, master plans for the communities, so that like communities are together. I don't know.
I think one thing that we're trying to do, a lot of the boundaries of our community plans don't make a lot of sense. But, for example, Sugar House and Central Community, 700 East is a boundary at 2100 South. It doesn't make a lot of sense for those two sides of the streets to have different be in different plans to find the land use policies. But one of the things that we are trying to do, and this does a little bit get back to what we put into the update to Plan Salt Lake and having consistent future land use designations, is also ensuring that where we have borders of plans, that they are at least congruent with each other, so they make sense. That way, it doesn't necessarily matter which plan it's in, as long as there's very close relationship between what happens at this property line when two properties, like the situation you're talking about with East Bench and Avenues, but it's literally a property line that divides that. So yeah, it's also kind of welcome to what happens when you have community plans versus a citywide land use plan. Yeah.
Just a comment. I have family that lives in this area, and and also as a biker, east-west streets are pretty easy on bikes to come in and out of the neighborhood. The north-south streets are the ones that there seems to be a fairly common conflict of stoplight or stop signs and bikers coming down. So I would just kind of just ask that in the master planning that perhaps certain streets are designated or striped, for bikers, associated with stop signs on the east-west route, because I think there's a fair amount of conflict of bikers coming down the hill very fast and cars not seeing them easily. So I think maybe in the master planning that if there's certain streets that are delineated for that both pedestrians and vehicular traffic can be aware of each other a little bit more. That'd be my only comment.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for the work that you've done on this. I know how intense the master planning process can be, or the general planning process can be. I grew up in the lower avenues, and I just want to sort of flag that so much of what makes the avenues wonderful and amazing as a neighborhood and a place where 95% of the people say it's highly livable is that mix of forms and mix of uses in a historic character. But frankly, the mix of forms and mix of uses, whether or not it's historic character, in combination with traffic calmed, highly walkable streets. So that's just a flag that I think we can bring to our other planning efforts. So thank you for all of the work that you've done.
Thank you.
Oh, and one last little thing. I would suggest you look at the definition of the frequent service network. My understanding is that the FSN does define service as 15 minutes on weekdays and Saturdays, and currently Route 209 only runs at 15 minutes on weekdays and 30 minutes on Saturdays.
Thank you. That's helpful. All right.
Is that enough? Do you have any questions for us? Anything you want us to think?
I don't think so. I mean, we are doing 3 community plans. I know we can't do them all, but we are doing avenues. Soon you'll hear about Capitol Hill, and we're in the process of Northwest. So it's quite a big undertaking.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So our next meeting is September 10th, which is not quite, it's more than 2 weeks. So come back then. We'll have training and voting and that kind of stuff. Thanks. This meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.